Hello, Dr. Liang Ward. I will be presenting my Taiwanese project to you today. My project is on wedding traditions, and it's by me, Tabitha Fletcher. So the contents of this template include an introduction, a research background, findings and discussions where we're going to be comparing, reflection, perspectives, feedback, along with a conclusion and questions that I had. And then I'll be sharing my references, and finally the end. Introduction. I will be discussing the marital events and customs that are culturally important to Chinese and Westerners or Americans. So, research background. I chose to compare Western and Chinese folk cultures because, as an American myself, I am curious to understand how others express their romantic commitment. My research sources are from personal blog posts, YouTube, and the resources shared in class. I felt that it was appropriate to use research sources from a first person point of view. Sharing what I found in the findings and discussion is how I integrated my sources into the project. And then below, I have my research sources. So, table of contents. So, first, I'm going to go into dating, second, engagement, third, wedding, and lastly, my conclusions and questions. First, like I said, dating. So, Chinese dating specifically, there is a shorter courtship. The act of confession occurs if both people, or maybe one person, likes the other, and then the other may feel the same way. But if you're hanging out with one person, it is considered a date. It is disrespectful for a man to hang out with other women if he is seeing someone. Little to no physical contact before confession or mutually expressing a committed relationship. The first kiss may not occur long after the first date, typically, in comparison to American dating or culture. In American dating, if you're hanging out with one person, it is not necessarily a date. Um, Usually, the courtships in the U.S. are longer, and they actually have a synonym, I would say, which would be called dating. So you can see other people when dating until both are ready to be monogamous and have the official title of being in a relationship. So, first kiss. Shortly after the first date, if not that same day, and usually if the first kiss does not happen very soon on the first date or after the first date, that is not a good sign. So, I found that very interesting in comparison to Chinese dating. But we're going to move on to engagement. So, Chinese engagement, we have the proposal, and during the proposal, there will be a matchmaker that will go with the, I guess you could say, groom, and they will bring along 30 gifts with their family members, and they will exchange gifts between families. So, in the birthday and the time, there will be a fortune teller that will pick an auspicious time and a day for the couple to become married. And then there are three letters that the groom will give to the female's family, the woman, the bride, and then they will arrange the marriage after those three letters have been given. So, American engagement. In a heterosexual relationship, the man typically asks the woman's father for her hand in marriage. The man proposes to the woman with an engagement ring, bowing down on one knee. If she says yes, then he will place it on her left hand. The couple will share the news with their families and friends. The groom and bride will ask their closest friends or family members to be in the wedding, also called the wedding party, which will be formed by assigning them titles such as the maid of honor, bridesmaid, flower girl, ring bearer, groomsman, and best man. So, closer to the date of the wedding, the couples will have individual celebrations known as the bridal shower and bachelorette parties. And at these parties, it is a time to celebrate their last day of so called freedom quotations until a couple days or a couple weeks later when they do become married. So, weddings. Chinese weddings specifically first. So, first, the groom will take a sedan to the bride's home. Um, and there will be auspicious symbols around the sedan, maybe in materials. And then there will be two sugar canes that are connected to each other, and that express or that is auspicious for how long the marriage will last and the commitment of it. There will be music and firecrackers that is super joyful. And then there's a farewell ceremony in the bride's home previous to the sedan arriving at her house. So the bride, she will wear a red dress, and previously, and hopefully not as much anymore, but women, especially young women or young females, were reluctant to get married because they didn't want to leave their family permanently, and it was just a nervous experience. Um, and then once the bride gets into the sedan, she will drop the fan outside of it, and that symbolizes an altered temper that is permanent. And her siblings, one of them will retrieve the fan. And then being careful with the threshold. So it's very important that as the bride is walking up to her home, that she's careful and maybe doesn't trip or something because it doesn't symbolize anything good if that occurs. And then they do the three bows once they get to the reception hall. And then they will have the bridal tea ceremony with the family, including the mother, the father, and the grandparents. And then lastly, we have the banquet with the family, and the couple will return to a chamber. And then American wedding. A wedding rehearsal may occur so that the wedding processional goes accordingly. The bride's father will pay for the wedding traditionally. The couple must not see each other the day of the wedding, starting with the evening before, and then rain on the day of a wedding is good luck. The bride will wear a white dress, the bride will receive another ring, and the groom will be given his wedding band also during the ceremony. The first dance occurs before anything else at the reception. The wedding cake is the centerpiece of the reception. The garter and bouquet toss are auspicious for whomever catches them will get married next. So the threshold is also something I found it was similar with the Chinese marriages also, or marriages in China. So threshold has the same I guess, kind of auspicious meaning in that just like be careful. And this is a moment where the bride doesn't want to leave her family but is going to live with his family. So I thought that was interesting how it's the same feelings that the bride is usually feeling towards leaving their household where they grew up and then moving on with the groom's family. So, for instance, with Americans, the threshold carry is where the groom will carry the bride um, out of the wedding area, whether that be the rehearsal. I mean, not the rehearsal. Excuse me. It'll be the reception. I mean. So yeah, and then lastly, the honeymoon, and that is also similar to the let's see. how they also go into the room, which I had seen here. The chamber, I mean. So that is very similar to the honeymoon. And then lastly, my reflection, perspectives, and feedback. So, reflection. The heterosexual perspectives are similar when it comes to um, the roles, the masculine and feminine roles that each of them have, where it feels like the female is kind of uh, being prepared for this day, whereas the man is preparing her for this day. I thought that was pretty interesting. And then perspective. I'm currently at a time in my life where I wonder what makes a marriage and what pivots in a relationship for two people to possess the strong urge to coexist. So I have always had, like, as an American, this want to get married, but what truly is the reason for marriage and things of the sort. So I really like cherish learning all of this from both cultures because it helps me get that understanding. And then for feedback, both cultures are suitable and should morph to modern society. So I think that I know some people would say that some of these things within the culture practices are outdated, and I believe some of them are when it comes to feminine and masculine roles, especially with different sexualities nowadays. So I would like to see how they have been changed and altered to fit modern day society. So, and then lastly, I personally feel that confession fits my personality. Perhaps that is why I get turned down. That's a little personal, right? But honesty, honestly, I feel that I am blunt and I'm very honest with my feelings, and relationship endeavors may come across as too direct, which is less acceptable in my culture as a Western person or an American. So I feel definitely right off the bat when I like someone, I really respect like telling them and it's the right thing to do, but it's not always received in the correct way. So I thought that was interesting that I aligned with that part with the Chinese dating. And then the fourth, the conclusion and questions, the last part. So I would like a more in-depth explanation in comparison of dating in Western culture in comparison to confession in China. So I would, like I said, I'm very interested in it. I feel like it fits my personality really well, and so that's why I would like to learn more about confession and how it compares to dating. So, statistically speaking, how many monogamous heterosexual Chinese and American married couples happily stay committed in the long term? Excuse my spelling. I meant to say long term. So, yeah, I'm very curious as to how maybe even the marriage or the way the families come together or just things within the culture with the relationship, how do they compare to like versus American and Chinese, like which one lasts longer and why so. So yeah, here are my references and the end. Thank you so much.